Okay, so welcome to week 14. Today we are going to cover chapter 7. So we didn't record the last session because we were reviewing the exam 2, SQL exam 2. So that's why we didn't record it. But today we are starting chapter 7 and finish chapter 7 by this week. And next week we are going to cover chapter 8 and probably the MySQL installation. So before starting, let me write here as a data admin and database administration. So let's call it DA and let's call it DBA. Okay, so I assume that some of you at least work during your bachelor that you are doing here. So based on your experience, I have a question. So have you ever seen this type of title in your organization? Which one you did more, data administration or database administration? Data admin. So did you have any contact with them? Do you know what they are doing in your organization? Okay, so the data access. The data access, technically, it's a database administration duty, responsibility. So we will talk about it. But the point is, in some organization, usually not those huge enterprise, huge organization, these two responsibility comes together in one group or one person. One team could be responsible for data administration and at the same time database administration. Okay, but the point is there is a huge difference between these two groups. They are related, but technically they are different. That's why in the higher level organization, let's say, I don't know, have 1,000, 2,000 employee, they usually have two different teams, one as a data administration team, one as a database administration. So we will talk about how these two are different. And again, we are just gonna do some small touches on these definitions to try to understand. But each of these um, role, data admin and database admin, DA or DBA, each could be again very, very huge different course and content that if you are interested, you can continue your career in that area. But oh my God. So before starting, let's review one more time what data means to us. So after almost 6 chapters that we had and almost 14 weeks, what is your perception right now with the data? Mhm. Yeah, let's say the best thing is data is everything. Exactly. Data is everything. Data is money. If you couldn't care about the data, you will definitely cannot be successful in your organization, in your business. So technically, data, if you want to use the analogy, we would say it's a business blood. Technically, data exists for the business, and business itself generate data. Okay, when you run the business, it's generating data. So it is our job to keep track of data and then gather those data and then according to those data create some database. Okay, so we can just easily mention right now that the data admin, data administration, or DA, they are more concerned about the data itself. What is that data? What is the definition of this type of data? The structure of the data, how the relation that we discussed during the last 6 chapters, how it works. We are, if you have already had the system analysis and design course, or if you are going to take that course, you will get a better understanding later how we can reach the ERD. In our class, we just mentioned very quick that we have some data, something happened before, and now we have the relationship between the tables that we had. I don't know, the sales table we had, the customer table we had, the shipping table, all the table that we have seen so far, okay? But in a real world, before this exact step, there are a lot happening before. So data administration roles, they are involved during this all process. The person that's the data admin, they all very, very aware and know the business well. They know how the data flows during the different departments, between the organization, in the organization. So that's how the data admins are responsible. Let's say, use this analogy. Data is the business blood, okay? So technically, database that we are creating, we consider as the veins and the heart of the business. And this data flow through the heart of the business, which we call it as a database. So one more time, that's the step. We, at the very, very first step, you are gonna see in system analysis and design course, some people would go through the business, do a lot of rounds of interview in terms of understanding the business. Then they will find the DFD, data flow diagram. And then they will find, okay, each department, there are specific features, there are specific attributes. Imagine the table with the attributes that we have. Now, how these tables related to each other through the which path, the foreign key, the primary key, how these tables are together, okay, are related together. And then they start to create a database, okay? And then after this one, there is a two role for us: data administration, database administration. Again, data administration or DA, they are purely responsible for the data itself, about the structure and integrity of the data. We will talk about the integrity of data, which is very important. And then the database administration, their responsibility is in another level. They shouldn't be in that much details of the business, how the business works. They are technically there for very, very main reason. What is the reason? Protect the data from whatever incident that could happen, from the cyber attack, from the natural disaster, from the whatever insider attack, anything. They are here to just keep the database safe, keep the whole system safe. And database administration, they are more technical, like a job. They should be aware of a lot of, I don't know, let's say in the cyber attack stuff, they should be very technical in terms of the preventing these type of cyber terrorists that they could attack your organization. Just imagine in a big picture, like a Meta, like an Apple, whatever, like some I don't know, very, very important organization, governmental organization, that they should keep all the database safe. So how the database administration matters in that organization, just thinking that way, not just a very, very small organization that probably these two are together. So one more time, the data administrator, they should definitely know how the business runs, how data creates, what is the definition of the data, what are the exact feature of each rows, each attributes that you have in your relation in the data. Database administration, they should for sure know how the system works, but not as much as detail for the data administration. They are more for the safety of the data. Okay, hello. So we just started, we are talking about the difference between a data admin and database administration. So let's start with the data admin. To understand about this, as we mentioned, technically the first and the most important role of the data administration people, again, is about the identifying the data, how data described, how data is structured, how those tables, those relations are connected with connected with each other. So that's the most and the first responsibility of the data admin. And again, in organization, some organization they can be the same. Some organization, which usually that's the norm, it should be different from the database administration role. Okay, one of the another task that data administration people would do, they create the metadata. Have you ever heard about the metadata? What is metadata means? Now, metadata technically it's another database in order to define the current database that we have. For example, let's say just a very simple example. We have the sale table, okay? We have the sale relation. There are feature, first name, last name, I don't know, SSN, address, some features. There is another database that would go and describe what is the sale table, what is the first name. This is simple. I'm just making as an example. What is the first name? What is the last name? What is the SSN? So technically, it's the sorry. It defines exactly, describe what is happening. Okay. So technically, we can call it as a data dictionary, also. So that's also the data administration people do. But again, another most important thing that they need to do is to make sure to check the quality and the integration of the data. When you have a database, hundreds of people in your organization, thousands of people in your organization, they are working on the database at the same time. So they should be make sure that the data is consistent, is reliable, and is trustworthy. So that's the points that they have to check. There are a lot of techniques for these. Again, we are just going through them, introducing them. So data quality and integrity should be accurate, current, consistent, reliable, relevant, and accessible. We will talk about them separately. So as a role that they have is about the is about the how to describe data. So naming the data, how the items should be named. For example, the attributes in some table. Or for example, what is the range of the data? If it's for example, I don't know, some number, what's the range and the value in that data? Or for example, what is the type and formats of the data? Are we gonna use, for example, for the, let's say, first name, are we gonna use the character 30 or are we gonna use the variable character 30? Now you know what is the difference between these two, okay? These are all the things that data administration people, these DA people, I'm just calling from now DA and DBA, okay? So DA for the data administration, DBA as a database administration. They're gonna do in order to define the database itself. For example, I don't know who owns the data. For example, some table, some relation is related to some specific department or organization. Some table is related to other people who can access this data. Also, another part that we can discuss about it later. We will discuss about it later. So that's the part that they should definitely check some data standards that we call as a data standards. But as I mentioned, regarding the also metadata and data repository that they create, they should check the data quality and integrity. They should make sure to meet these conditions, accurate. All the data is accurate. If, for example, some data that are collected from the sale department, are they accurate or they are fake? That's one of their responsibility. Or for example, the database that they have, the data that they have, are the whole data sets, or the whole database that they have, are they represent the whole business? Maybe they did a lot of analysis and at the end they came to this different relationship between these diagrams. After 1 year, after 2 years, are they still capturing all the information? Or maybe something happened in the organization in these 2 years and they have to go and again check and see, for example, not miss any type of data from the organization. And also the current, are they definitely collecting the most up-to-date data in the organization, especially if the organization is in contact with the transactional data. For example, if it's a, I don't know, internet store website that they are selling second by second, a lot of transactioning happening second by second. Are they capturing all of them? That's another important thing. And then consistent organization, different branches, different uh, customers, different people working. Are all the data that we are capturing, are they consistent with each other? That's also another important thing. Reliable, relevant, also another one. And the last one, which is so important, is the accessible. Are the data accessible at the moment for the people that they are authorized to use? So that's also another important thing. So technically, even though we mentioned that the data administration is different from database administration, but technically they are working with each other. Let's say the data admin people, DA people, they are creating food for the DBA people. They went through a lot of analysis, everything with some other teams. At the end, now they have the data, they define the data, they created the database. Now they are giving this one to these people, but at the same time, they are working with each other. Okay, so that's the one of the most important difference between these two groups. Any questions so far? No. If you are supposed to work in these two areas, which one you would prefer? Mm-hmm. 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 Oh, you had the issue. Okay, tell us. Okay, okay, which is a very tough job. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So it shows how this is important to just be in the right depth. The point is for the DA, as you mentioned, again, they are more involved with the business. They know how the business works. That's why they can understand the data, define the data. But the DBA people, technically, again, it doesn't mean that they don't have any understanding of the business, but they are not there for understanding the business. They are only there to protect the data from anything. We will talk about it. So now let's go to the DBA or database administration people. So again, the first and the most responsibility of this team is to just protect it from anything that we can have. So we'll talk about it. One of the uh, big responsibility of these people, usually in the organization, there are multiple databases. So they should be definitely able to work with the different type of database management system that we have in the organization, which is a very tough job because they should be again those systems they should work in a very same direction in the organization, and they should be uh, consistent with each other, especially when they are dealing with some different type of department in the organization. So that's one of the job that they should do. Another things that they should do again is about the protecting a database. Okay, so which means any possible attack that can happen, which is very, 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 very common these days. So if we just search right now on the Google, I don't know, the most recent database attack, maybe it just happened a couple of days ago in some organization all around the world. Okay, so this is very important to protect the database from this type of attackers. And also, they have a lot of equipments. I think we have one in this floor. We have some database in that hallway, I would say. I think so. So that's for the business school. So it is important to protect that room from everything that could happen. I don't know, from the people that could go to that room. About the, for example, whatever natural disaster that possible to happen. So that's the other things. It could be physical, like a whatever attack, or I don't know, some people that wanna go through that specific database system, database room that they have, and also it could be in a software level. It could be some program errors. It could be everything. So that's why we mentioned that for the DBA, they are more technical rather than to just, for example, understanding the business. They should be. Do you want to show me something? Okay. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Where is it? Okay, that's good. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it is. Because those data worth billions of dollars. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. And it's true. Because again, imagine Meta, imagine I don't know, Apple, imagine those type of big company. If for whatever reason they go off for a couple of minutes, I don't know, something happened to the database systems and they go shut down for a couple of minutes. I think it happened last year, if I remember correct. Happens to the Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook. They went out for a couple of minutes, and I read later on the news that a couple of $100 million they lost just because of these couple of minutes that they were off. So this one shows and proves how the data matters, how data it is important. Okay, so another things that they should definitely make sure to have, it's about the level of the performance of the database in the system, in the business. Okay, we will see later. One of the way to protect the data is to having backup for sure. If we have a good backup, we would at least say, okay, if for whatever reason we lost the data, we'll have the option. But we will see. We have different type of a backup option. One of the backup system is just turning up everything and then back up the system, which requires a cold backup. We'll talk about that. So in that one, technically, it's more safe, it's more secure, but at the same time, we are shutting down the whole system for a couple of minutes and maybe a couple of hours. So it's not that much efficient. But there is another backup system that we can run the backup at the center the system is running. So we call this as a hot backup. The system is running, we have the backup, more efficient but less secure. So that's the trade-off that they should make a decision for, at the same time having the very, very secure database, but but very, very, very efficient database. That's the kinds of things that they should also make sure to be involved with the DA people. We'll talk about them again. So we are just mentioning multiple times. The first and the most important responsibility and duty of the DBA people is to make the data secure, make the database secure, keep it safe from whatever could happen. Okay, so it could consider in a two different level of category. The first one we call as a physical security. Again, providing a safe place for all these database devices that we have. Again, here it's here. You mentioned about the, so where is located exactly? Downtown Atlanta. next to your system. Mhm. 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 So how again it shows how it is important to keep this type of database safe from whatever attack that could happen. That's on a physical level, and just imagine on the software level that some people in another side of the world, in some country, they are trying to filtrate and access your system. So that's why we mentioned multiple times that DBA it's more technical skill rather than just knowing the business itself. Okay. Another thing is that the second level of the security is about the data access security. Okay. We have this room. It's a full of different type of computers and the systems and the hard drives that run the database on this. Okay. I want to know who can access to this one. I don't know, maybe Hossein Mohi just have access to this room, but person X, person Y, they don't have access to this room. In that case, it means I have enough authentication to access this room, but those people, they didn't have the authentication to have this room. So that's why the first one we call as authentication, which means what type of people who in the organization, they have access to this part, okay? And then the next level is gonna be the authorization. Now I have access, for example, to some level of the data. Okay, so let's imagine we have. Let's go with the like a Red Cat database that we have. Just simple one we have. I am in the sale department. You are in the inventory department. Okay, we both have access to this database. We can see the inventory. We can see the sale, whatever. I myself, since I'm working in the sale department, I just have access to the sale table. I can just only, for example, input information into the sale table. And you just have access to the inventory table, which means we have different level of authorization. My authorization is just for the sale table. You have just for the inventory table. Okay. And again, for that one, it could be different level of authorization. Some of them is read-only authorization. I can just see the data and I can do anything. You have the read and write. So you can also read the data and at the same time, you can also write the data, change the data, update the data. That's also a different level of the authorization that is available. And also different users, different rules for sure, they are different. So that's why we have again two levels. Physical security, just make sure to protect the database from whatever could happen into the database. And then about the data access security, authentication, who can access to this type of things, and authorization, who with which level of access. Are they can just read the data? Are they able to, for example, read and at the same time update the data? Do they have access to the whole database, some part of a database? So that's the different level of the authorization that we have. And sometimes, for whatever reason, mistake, there is a possibility that some people have the uh, unwanted access just by mistake to some specific part of a database. And imagine that person is not happy with the organization. So he, she, they want to, at the moment, for example, do some damages to the data, but that's the part that DBA people they tried before to do the encryption. To use the encryption system again, just the encryption. It's another level of different course that you might take. We have a lot of different type of encryption techniques. 256 HASH hash. I don't know. We have a lot of different type of encryption technique. We are not going to talk about them. Just the data is encrypted with some specific method, and if I have access, I cannot read the data. Okay, the only people that they can decrypt the data is the people that they have enough authentication and enough authorization to have access to the data. Any question? again, these 2 weeks is gonna be more like a story. So we are just gonna learn about and get familiar with this type of concept. But same as everything that needs to be regulated, for the database system, there are a lot of regulation systems that organization they should make sure to go through those regulations and make sure to satisfy those regulations. Otherwise, they will definitely get punished by the organization, by the, I don't know, the governments or whatever people that are in charge. So for the organizational level, there are a lot of different policy, data policy, information system strategy, and the security policy. For each organization, it could be different from the other organization. Of course, there are some best practice available in the uh, market that you can use those best practice in your organization about the policy of protecting your data safe. Okay, but you might have your own policy for your data. You might have your own strategy for your data. Okay, so from the second level, which we have the industry level, also again, there are some people, some consultants that they can consult you with some specific rules and regulation for a database. Okay, but also there are some industry that they have their own regulation, they have their own policy, they could be different. And also one level higher, let's go to the governmental level. I don't know, the states, the national wide uh, organization, that they should also go through different type of uh, policy. For example, the HIPAA. Do you know what is the HIPAA? For the healthcare center? I think it's a healthcare insurance protected policy agency, something like that. So there are some specific policy that the health industry they should make sure to just definitely meet this requirement. For example, I'm not exactly familiar with the policy. For example, some specific biological information regarding the patient, they should be definitely keep hidden from the access, the public access. Okay, that's one of the HIPAA policy. So if you have the health system and you make these data available, you are violating the law, which is the very uh, definitely bad things that could happen for this type of organization. Or FERPA. You all know what is the FERPA. It is your right for the students that their grade should be, for example, uh, keep secret and hidden, etc., just for the advisor, for the instructor, and some specific people. So technically, these regulation, these laws, they are there for make sure that the whatever type of customer here, the customer is the students or their patient, whatever people that could benefit from this institution, their privacy and their specific personal information that they have, for example, they all make sure that they are in a safe place. They are not I mean, just let's say bridge to the public. Okay, so that's also another. Or for example, the Sarbanes Oxley. So anyone know what is it? It's for the investors. So to make sure that this type of transaction, the investor they have in a different, for example, I don't know, broker or all things, so they could be safe. So that's also some regulation. And also another one, which we have as an international regulation policy, like the one we have as a general data protection regulation or GDPR. So if your organization works in international level, different countries, you should be make sure to have this type of policy. And again, if your organization, for example, you have a branch in London and you have a branch in the South Asia, for example, again, you should make sure to not violate the rules of those countries. That's why we can see how this DBA it's important. They should make sure to go through all the different type of regulations, policy, and the laws. And it's a like a very complex thing. Different ISO, yeah. Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. All of these certification like ISOs or I don't know, whatever these type of regulation that we just read, technically at the end of the day, even though it looks they are very tough and hard, but at the end of the day, it's just make sure the business runs better in terms of keep the benefit of the both sides, the customers and also the owner of the business. One of the uh, challenging tasks, as we already mentioned multiple times, when you're working with the database, it's about the concurrency control. Multiple people working with database, so there could be some issue. Imagine I have the website like Amazon in a scale of 1 to 1 million, very small business, and I am selling, for example, this mug just in my website. And for example, Michael goes to my site and wanna make an order of one of these, and another goes again to the website and at the same time wanna make a purchase another one of these things. And in general, I just have one in my inventory. Okay, you are doing at the same time. If something that we are going through, if we don't have those type of policy for the database, we are going to have a problem. So that's why it is important to go through these structure that we have: ACID, atomic, consistent, isolated, and durable. Okay, so this is the type of things that we should have when you are designing database and we are working with database, especially for the transactional databases like the one that I mentioned as an example. The first one, atomic. Transaction cannot be subdivided. If it's one transaction, it's gonna stay one transaction. You cannot divide it to 2 or 3 different transactions. That's the first rule. The second rule, consistent. Rules and constraints in the database before the transaction must be true after. If you are purchasing $120 for 3 items from my website, when you are purchasing those items, it should stay still be 3 items for the $120. There shouldn't be any difference between the before and after transaction. Isolated. Other users cannot see the transaction during the process. Obvious. And the last one, durable. Once a transaction is done, it's done. You cannot revoke that transaction. You can return and request for a refund for the system. It's different thing. That's another transaction. But once the transaction happened, it happened. It's done. Okay? That's why for keeping the database secure and safe and make sure to not have any uh, conflicts in the database, we use the lock system, which we'll talk about it. Lock system technically restrict the access to the database in some level. We have different type of locking system. We will see different level of the locking system. Okay. So we have locking levels in 5 different ways. We can lock the whole database when some transaction is happening, which technically is the ridiculous one, because some people are trying to purchase something and you are locking the whole database of your system. Technically, sometimes maybe in some specific cases works, but at this moment, as far as I know, it is a ridiculous thing. But it is possible to lock the whole system. And other things uh, could happen when you want to, for example, just lock some specific table. For example, this is common. I am purchasing something, it's just the sales, for example, table would be locked, or inventory table would be locked. And also we know the view. What is the view? we learn what is the view. Instead of, for example, having just a table, we have some views that show some specific part of the table, some specific relation. We can lock those, or you can just lock some specific records, some specific rows in your organization. And at the end, we can lock some specific attributes, fields, or column. Just let's see this example. Mary, customer ID 831, Jane, customer ID 922. They both started to purchase something from my website. I have the inventory table, sale table, and the sale item table. They are both looking for one specific item, part 150, which we call it Attica boots. And we have just 12 items at the store. Okay? They are just doing the transaction exactly at the same time, almost the same time. So technically, after these two transactions, we should have just 10 items left. We had 12 items, one purchase, two purchase. Together, we should have 10. But since we didn't make sure to have this type of locking levels, that's why at the end of these two transactions, our system still shows that the Attica boot is on 11, which technically is wrong. We should have just 10 because we just sold too often. Okay? But if we could, for example, lock the inventory table while this transaction is happening, technically we are addressing this issue. Okay? So technically, as we mentioned, we have different locking levels and we have two different locks: exclusive lock, shared lock. So which means we can have the exclusive lock for the database, we can have the shared lock for the database. So that's the levels, that's the two different locks we have. Exclusive lock, which means if I am locking something, no one else in the system, they cannot have access and read the database. But the shared lock, even though it is locked, but they can see what's happening. They can see that the inventory table is getting updated. Okay? So again, one more time. We have different levels of lock: database, table, views, rows, attributes, but we have two different locking systems: exclusive lock, shared lock. We can have a table exclusive lock, we can have a table shared lock. That's the difference. And the challenging part, it comes when we have multiple tables, multiple records, and we would like to have different type of level of logs for this system. And just imagine how it could be challenging for a database administration people. Okay?
They were literally in thousands of dollars
Mm-hmm.
ticketing me
Mm-hmm.
pull out the estimate,
Wow.
like dollar median didn't even
Yeah. So they locked all the system.
all the data, seat assignment, now.
Yeah.
It literally almost disappeared.
Such a tragedy. Yes, right. Yeah, how it could be important. Mhm. And you couldn't have access to it.
Yes, there is 11 level.
Or just those higher level people, they have access. Exactly. So again, based on a different reason, as you mentioned, just because of that tragic incident, an attack. Yeah, it happened. Yeah. So let's talk about the last one, which is about the backup, recovery, and the performance. So all databases, they should definitely provide at least these three features: duplicating record, logging, recovery. We will talk about them itself. But the point is, one more time, data, we can say it's one of the most valuable things in the company. If you cannot protect data, if you cannot use data in a right way, in an efficient way, technically you are losing money second by second. Okay? So we mentioned about how it is also important at the same time to have the secure and also the efficient. Okay, so let's go through these three procedures. The first one, duplicating recording. Duplicate recording. So we should have the backup of data. We all have right now the backup of whatever we have in our phone, for example, in our iCloud or whatever clouding system that we are having. Okay, why? Because for myself, some specific information that I have, for example, in my digital wallet, I would like to make them safe. If I lose my phone, at least I can have access to them. Or I don't know, simple. I have some specific picture from my family. I would like to save them. So that's a data, okay? And that one matters to me, important to me, okay? So in the organization, it is also so important to have the good backup of the data. We have two different backups: hot backup, cold backup. Again, hot backup system is running, and at the same time, the database admin people, they are doing the backup, which means whatever transaction is happening during the backup, they will also store in the backup, okay? So it is efficient because the whole system works, but at the same time, it could be not that much secure and safe. Maybe some of the transaction we missed when we are doing the backup. But efficient, less secure. And then we have the cold backup. Again, in some organization, for example, they announce, for example, every Tuesday night from midnight to 2 a.m., 2 hours, we are doing the backup. So technically, they are doing the cold backup. The system doesn't work in that specific 2 hours, and they are doing the backup. For sure, very secure, but again, based on some organization, might not be a efficient situation. Okay, so that's why, again, this trade-off matters. That's why the data policy, the strategy that the DBA people they made matters for the organization. Even some small decision, maybe they could save huge amount of money, and maybe they would waste huge amount of money with some specific small decision that we have. We will talk about it at the end of this slide. Another way of the duplicate recording is to having the mirroring techniques. What is the mirroring techniques? Which means we have a database, we are recording data, have everything happening here. At the same time, we have exactly another database, exactly replicate whatever transaction, another one. One of the most secure one, because if you lose this one, technically this one just at the moment could work, but it's too expensive. Technically, you should have two different places for the databases, two different people that running, two different groups that running these two. But it is a technique, and some organizations they might use it because it is so safe. The other one, logging. Hossein goes to the database, adds something to the sale table. It's going to be recorded. Michael goes to the database, deletes something from the sale table. It's going to be recorded. The timing order matters. Who did the first one? Did I first delete, added, and he deleted, or he added, I deleted? That order matters. So that's why whatever happening, it should be recorded. Okay? When it matters, when you are trying to do the backup for some specific table, and if they back up at the moment that I added the data, they're gonna miss that part that the Michael deleted the data. because he did it after me. Okay, so that's why it is matter to do the recovery and backup, recovery and restore from the last stage that the backup happened. For example, the part that Michael deleted something from the tape. So that's part, the restoring data is important and it should be definitely error free. And the last one, we talked again a lot about the security, about the everything. It is important to have the very, very high performance, highly performance for the data. It should be very efficient. We mentioned for the first name, we can have, for example, variable characters of the 30 or character of the 30. So we know what's the difference between these two. I don't want to challenge you to answer me. I assume that you know that. So when we say character 30, we will assume that we will save 30 characters in the system. If Hossein name has a 6 characters, technically you are wasting 24 characters in your system, but it is fast, okay? Variable character, we reserve 30 characters, but the system goes to the Hossein and see Hossein has a 6 character, so it will just assign 6 characters to this one and save 24 characters. This is what we have learned and we know about it. But the point is, for this one, the CPU did 2 things. First, go through the Hossein's name, check the Hossein's number of characters, and then assigned it. So it's the extra things. It happens in a maybe, I don't know, this type of amounts of the second. It's a fraction of the second. But again, imagine in the organization that they have trillions of rows of data yearly. Trillions times this amount could be a huge difference. So that's why it is important to make the very, very strategic decision for all of these, even small things, the database. I have a background in industrial engineering, bachelor and master. So do you have any idea about industrial engineering? Do you have any idea? No, 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 no. So electrical engineering, they have some electrical tool. I don't know. Architects, they have some architectural tool. Mechanic, they have some mechanical tool. Industrial engineering doesn't give you anything except one thing, thinking. Thinking in a way that to use the minimum resources in terms of maximum the performance. We call that optimization. Okay, it is important for us to use minimal resources to have as much as possible performance in the organization. Okay, so that's a trade-off between the resources and the outcome. So as much as we can use, if I can use $100 to run a business and have an outcome of the $200,000, for example, we are just imaginary making example. For sure, it's better than to, for example, using $1,000 and generate the same amount of outcome. So that's all because of optimization. So that one, the optimizing the system is the one of the best and I would say critical responsibility of the DBA people. Okay. So since I am an industrial engineering and I know how to do everything in a very optimized way, so we are just done a quarter before the class time. Okay. So let me stop recording. So that's about the chapter 7.